My favorite story is the first day I moved to Austin. I walked into Whole Foods at the Domain here, and I brought Granarly and I put it on the shelf with my friends. And the guy working at Whole Foods was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I want my product here one day." And he was like, "Well, why don't I connect you with the right person to do that?" And it was the person he connected me with that day that ended up bringing us in, but not till 4 years later.
Hi, and welcome back to Shelf Talks. I'm your host, Roberta, and today we have with us the lovely Morgan Potts, founder of a unique whiskey-infused granola, most notably on the shelves of Whole Foods and Target, as well as a lot of retailers across the country. Hi, Morgan. How are you today?
Hi, I'm so great. Thank you so much for having me. How are you?
I'm I'm good. Thank you for asking me.
Good.
I'm really excited, intrigued, and a little bit inspired about how you went from kind of one direction, path, and goal in your life to pretty much overnight going in a whole different direction. So I would love to kind of start there. Prior to that night, what were you doing in your life, and what direction and path were you going in?
Yeah, it's so funny. Yesterday I promise I'm going to get to my story in a second, but yesterday I was with my boyfriend's mom and we were playing with the dogs and she was like, "Morgan, you would make a great vet." And that's actually what I was going to school for. And she didn't realize that because Granarly is like my life. And so I was like, that's so funny that someone yesterday spoke to the thing that I thought I was going to be like 10 years ago more. And for 5 seconds I was like, should I do that? And then I was like, no, no, no. But anyway, so basically, from ever since I was a little girl, my parents were always like, you are very entrepreneurial. I was selling cups of water to the postman for like $5 because I had no change. And just my dad was like, you are such a sale, like you could sell anything to anyone. And I just loved creating and innovating. And I was, part of different clubs in high school, like DECA and marketing clubs. And it wasn't until I had the dream of Granarly, which I'll talk about in a second, but that I realized my ideas were worth pursuing. I always kind of thought like I have a weird brain or a weird mind, and why do I think of, I'm always like creating. How can I make something better? Like, what if we start this? And people are like, Morgan, people do that. I'm like, okay, well, we can do it better. But anyway, so when I went to college, I went to Louisiana Tech University, and I had been one of my high school courses was being an intern at a vet clinic. And I'd always been very intrigued by the medical field, and I fell in love with the vet clinic, mainly the people I was working with. And so I went to college to study pre med that ended up being pre vet. And I took all the organic chemistry classes, slaved away in all the classes that they make you take, learned everything about horses and chickens and cows. And I was like the girl on the farm, which is hilarious. And I actually got accepted to vet school. And it was the same week that I got accepted to vet school that I had the dream of Granarly. So I can't speak to like a lot of my career experience prior to Granarly because it was all in college, but that's kind of the direction I thought my life was headed in.
Wow. So you said you had like lots of different ideas kind of throughout as you're growing up. What made this idea feel like this is the one?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think like, I was always making bracelets or like I said, selling lemonade or whatever it was. But so for those that don't know my story, Granarly came to me in a dream and it was right before I was about to go snowboarding. It was my senior college trip as with my sorority and I love snowboarding and I had this dream and it was put whiskey in granola and call it Granarly. That was the dream. And I wrote it down in my notes and I have the notes. And I woke up and the thing that was different to me is I was like, wait a second. I like did a quick whiskey granola search. No one is making whiskey granola. I never made granola. I didn't even like whiskey. We had Fireball at my house because like my I lived with a bunch of college girls and we had Fireball. But I was like, I mean, this kind of makes sense. Like whiskey's made from grains. Granola uses honey and cinnamon. They make honey and cinnamon whiskey. And I was like, we're about to go snowboarding and everyone takes these little Fireball shots and everyone eats Cliff Bars like on the mountain. I'm like, why can't we just combine the two? And I was like, it doesn't really get you drunk or anything. The whiskey bakes out. But in my mind, and it wasn't that day, I'm going to make this very clear for those listening. Like, it wasn't that day that I was like, oh, this is going to be a thing. But I was like, wait a second. I do think we're onto something. And the name Granarly, like, are you kidding me? And so, yeah, that was kind of the moment where I was like, all right, I'm going to see about this.
Wow, that's so crazy and just so interesting that that is the one that like really stuck in your mind.
Yeah.
So then what was next after that? You said it didn't happen right away. So what was kind of the steps in which you kind of started to say, let me get on this path?
Yeah, good question. I think it's funny, like hindsight 2020, right? Like I have a lot of other businesses I want to start. I'm sure we'll talk about this later in the show, but and I would do things a lot differently, but I think naivety and innocence is a lot of what plays into starting businesses, which you need. I'm a big believer, because people can tell you all day long, there's enough granolas, you'll never make it, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I'm not listening to y'all. Like, I believe in this. And so I made it and put it in little baggies, didn't even have a logo or anything. And I brought it on the ski trip and I started passing it out to everyone because customer feedback is important. And everyone loved it. They were like, "What is this? Like, what did you do differently? I don't like granola, but I love this." And so, back to the vet school thing, my family was like, you should go to vet school. You worked 4 years for this. You got accepted. It's really hard to get into. Like, go to vet school. And something kept tugging on me about Granarly. I was like, I can't let this go. Like, I know nothing about the food industry, nothing about food science, food safety, nothing. But I was like, I just can't, like, I don't know. I feel unsettled about just making the decision to spend a lot of money and go to vet school. It's not like a small decision, you know? And so I moved to Shreveport, Louisiana. I deferred my acceptance to vet school. They let me go either in August or January, so I said I would go in January. And little did I know, all roads led to Granarly in Shreveport, from the woman I met at my church, she's a manufacturer, to all the connections I made. Like, I just genuinely knew Granarly was the way to go. And so I have never looked back at vet school until yesterday when that comment. I do love animals, but I just had to follow that gut feeling of like, I may not know what this looks like or where this is going to lead, but like, I know this is what I have to do. And so that was May of 20, let's say 15, when I graduated college. The next March, I became a nanny for the manufacturing lady because I was like, hey, I want to learn everything. She was a mom, a wife. Her husband worked for her. She ran like an operation that fed her family, and like she'd been doing her business for years and years since she was 16. And I was like, I just want to learn everything from you. Like, teach me accounting, teach me food safety, teach me manufacturing, everything. And so I became her nanny because I was like, well, I mean, that's one way to spend 40 hours with someone that I aspire to be like. And while I was working for her that March, Shark Tank called me and they were like, hey, we heard about you. Someone nominated you. Like, we're interested in Granarly. How much money do you need from the Sharks? And I literally told them $2,000. Like, I didn't know. I started Granarly with $100. So I was like, oh, I can do a lot with 2,000. And so that was the call I needed to be like, oh, maybe I am onto something and maybe I should make this a real business. So that kind of propelled me into the whole Granarly adventure.
Yeah. So when they called, were you already selling in some capacity? Like, how did they
Yeah,
even
I
know
was
you
like
were?
selling in I was doing handwritten labels still, and I worked at a little outfitter store in Shreveport and they let me sell it there. So I like sold it to some of my customers there. I think I can't remember if I had already done the farmers market. I did the Shreveport farmers market, but I was selling it, but not, I mean, not like a website or anything. And then when they called me, I got my LLC. I would set up a website and I started really taking it more seriously, which is so funny because looking back now, I mean, that was nothing serious compared to where we've been now. But in my eyes, I was like, oh yeah, like let me take this serious. So yeah.
Yeah. I guess that was kind of the spark just that you needed to kind of go over to the next level to make it official and kind of move forward.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I knew in my gut that it was what I wanted to do, but I needed that boost of confidence to be like, oh, well, if Shark Tank is intrigued by my idea, maybe I'm onto something there.
Maybe this is something. What made
Yeah.
you move to Shreveport?
So I went to college at Louisiana Tech, and then it's an hour west of Ruston, and I was working for an outfitter store, like I said, in college, and I loved the family, and they really took me under their wing. And when I was unsure of what I wanted to do, they were opening a store in Shreveport, and they were like, "Do you want to move and open the store for us?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I would love that." So again, like entrepreneurial, but working under someone. But I'm just like ball of energy, go getter. I'm like, yeah, you want me to go open a store? I'll figure it out. So that's what I did.
That's great. And I love how you went and said, how can I be with this woman 40 hours 40 hours a week so I can learn everything that she knows in order to be successful. So I think that's just a really great
Yeah.
note to find the people that you know can kind of help you push and move forward.
Exactly. And that was actually, I can't take credit for that. That was some wisdom I got from a dear friend. And he was like, Morgan, if I had a chance to go work for X to learn like everything from them and get paid to do it, like I would totally take it. He's like, because I was sad to leave the family I worked for. I worked for them for years. They, helped me through, not helped me through college, but like were there for me through college and I loved them. But I was like, I have to take this leap of faith. And when I say I learned everything, she took me under her wing, and I hope to do this with someone one day. But we started like sales rep companies. We were doing all her accounting. Like it was hilarious. I did a bunch of trade shows. Like it was so much fun, but she just really trusted me and loved my ideas. So it's kind of like I got to own a lot of little businesses that she was doing too, which I think looking back, like set me up for a lot of success in different ways.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure.
Mm.
So Shark Tank calls, you say, okay, I need to make this, get this, be serious about it and
Yeah.
get the LLC and really start. So then what happened right after that? What was next steps?
Yeah, so that was March. I'll never forget. I was in Ruston visiting my aunt at her birthday dinner when they called me, and I was like, "Wait, you're kidding me." And I mean, it's not an easy journey. Like I'm sure we'll get into this more with questions too, but like it hasn't always been sunshine and rainbows. But basically when they called, I sent them, I have a picture of it, like Ziploc bags of Granarly and a little USB drive with my video that I made for them, and I mailed that to them. And I never heard back from them, but I still love that I got that call because then what happened? That was 2016. So still working for Allison. It propelled me into doing the Louisiana State Fair, doing the farmers market, and just kind of getting our name out there more and taking risk in little ways. And I was like, I want this to be. I remember when I was 23, I was like, I want this to be global. And someone's like, all right, why don't you start national first? And I'm like, but why? Like, we could be everywhere. And so I feel like if anyone listening today wants to start their own CPG brand, like, it's great to have those dreams and aspirations. I truly believe you need that drive and grit, but like also be really open-handed with where your product, like where the consumers are taking you, you know? So in 2017, I remember thinking, okay, we have a few small accounts under our belt, like independent stores in Louisiana. But I remember most people in Shreveport, and like I love Shreveport people, but they were like, why whiskey? Why granola? Like, not really into the whole like health and smoothie bars and acai bowls. Like that wasn't really a big thing yet. And I remember visiting Hawaii in early 2017 and I was like, I think it's time for me to spread my wings. And I couldn't decide where I wanted to move. And it was either going to be San Diego, Hawaii, or Austin. And my best friend from college, she was down to move with me. And so I remember being like, all right, well, I believe that where there's a will, there's a way. And if the door opens to a place, that's where we'll go. And so, in true Morgan fashion, I applied for a food truck festival in Austin, Texas, because in my brain, I wanted to live in Hawaii and I wanted to live in San Diego. But if Granarly was now being manufactured with Allison at this point, and I was like, if Granarly's manufactured in Louisiana, I should probably be like somewhat nearby just for ease of shipping and everything. I was like, running a stateside brand in Hawaii is probably not going to be like feasible, you know? And so I applied for a food truck festival. I did not have a food truck. And I was like, I know. But I'm like, Austin's known for like the land of food trucks and a lot, you can do a lot in a food truck to start a business. And my roommate was down. She was like, I'll go with you. I'm like, okay. And so I applied and they accepted me and they were like, you got the last spot. We can't wait to see your food truck. And I was like, oh, it's in the shop. I'll send you a picture. And literally 2 days later, we had a food truck. 1 month later, we had a big launch party in Louisiana. And then the next month, that was October 17th, 2017. So, I mean, almost this time of year that in 2017, me and Shelby hit the road, and our first day open was at the food truck competition.
Wow. So what were you selling Granarly on the food truck?
Yeah, so we were doing acai bowls and we were doing toast with like toast with what do we put on there? Granola, strawberries, and coconut and peanut butter. It was actually really good. And so it was like a kind of like avocado toast, but with a granola spin and then the acai bowls. And people just started loving our granola because I don't know if you tried it yet, but it's there. The flavors are. Oh, you got some. I love it.
I did.
You could probably speak to this then. You got the king cake. It's so freaking good. But the flavors are so good that people are used to putting granola on top of something just as like an added crunch. And Granarly is, we've made it more clustered now, but it's snackable and flavorful enough to eat by itself. And so that's really what propelled me into doing our snack packs. We don't make them anymore, but kind of what pulled the granola apart from the food truck was people love the taste of the granola so much, and they kept asking me where they could get it. And I'm like, oh, we should just start packaging it. So kind of like backwards way, like I started packaging it, did the food truck, started making connections in Austin, and then I started packaging it again. So
Got it. Okay. So when you said right before you moved and decided out of the three places where you were going to go, you started selling in a couple of retail stores that were local.
yeah.
How did you actually get into those retailers?
Yeah, great question. So what's the right word to describe me? Confident, but like I don't want to say like cocky, but I would just walk in these stores and like with any retail relationship I've learned, it's all about relationships, right? And you're probably going to get a no at first. I mean, with the larger ones, but just really developing. I actually spoke on a panel this morning at Austin Tech Week, and I was like, it with a HEB buyer, and relationships are everything truly because you're going into a partnership. You're not just putting a product on a shelf. Like that to me is a win, but it's getting it off the shelf. So
Hmm.
anyway, I bet we'll dive into that more. But with these small mom and pops, I would just walk into the stores and be like, you should sell Granarly, and like, little gift shops. Like I call it the giftable granola because it is a little higher price point with really top quality ingredients, but it's a great gift. It's exciting. So really thinking outside the box of like, hey, where are like the finer foods grocery stores, or we one of our biggest accounts in Shreveport was a smoothie bowl bar, and they just bought it bulk from us, but then people were consuming it, and we would put our brand on their menu, and then they knew to go find me online or like look for us in stores as we grew. So really thinking outside the box of like, okay, where would people buy something like Granarly? But yeah, I would just email, like guess people's emails, find people's emails online, make a list of, I didn't have a CRM back then, just like make a Google sheet of like, okay, who do I want this to have this? My favorite story is the first day I moved to Austin, I walked into Whole Foods at the Domain here, and I brought Granarly and I put it on the shelf with my friends. And the guy working at Whole Foods was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I want my product here one day." And he was like, "Well, why don't I connect you with the right person to do that?" And it was the person he connected me with that day that ended up bringing us in, but not till 4 years later. So I like to encourage people listening, like, just because it's a no now doesn't mean it's a no forever. I mean, we had to get a lot of our branding right. We had to get a lot of our SKUs right. Like, we were not, I thought we were ready that day, but we weren't ready. And I'm glad we came in when we did. So,
Yeah. I think too a great note from what you just talked about is the fact that, a lot of people think that, hey, I just started my brand today and I want to be in all of Targets tomorrow. There's a way for you to kind of start in local, smaller stores, understand like your packaging, customers, comments and reactions to your product if you have to make any changes, and really understanding retail and how you deliver before you go into such a bigger kind of mass play.
yes. And bigger is not always better. You're so right. Like, everyone told me at the beginning, like, start with your grassroots, start with your core people, like, really nurture them and learn from them and everything. And I think we did that to some degree. I think with our national Target launch, which we can get to in a minute, but I did go from like 10 to 512, and I would go back and probably do that a little differently. But, whatever. I learned a lot along the way. But yeah, but getting into these massive retailers isn't always all that it's hyped up to be. It's great and a great opportunity, but you really got to develop that core cult following in order for it to work.
So when you were in those smaller retailers, what was initial customer feedback? And then what were kind of the major lessons you learned about working with a retailer?
Yeah, I think looking back, and it's funny we're having this conversation today because I'm very much in a transition point with Granarly, which I'll be very honest about. I think, granola is a hard category. It's very competitive. I think people love working with me and working with Granarly. We get the most response about our packaging. Everyone loves our packaging, which I mean, I think it's great. It stands out on the shelf. But for context, for those listening, when I first started Granarly, I wanted to fit in. I wanted our packaging to look like all the other granolas, like to be on the shelf. I thought it needed to be clean cut and white and very like crisp and just very whiskey. And I don't even know how to explain it. I wish I had a picture. But it wasn't until COVID that I was like, why am I trying to look like every other brand? Like, that's not how we're going to stand out on the shelf. And I have decision fatigue when I go shopping, and I'm such a brand girl. Like, I totally judge book by their cover if I'm trying something for the first time. And so I was like, we're Granarly. Like, I have an excuse to literally do something crazy. And so we ended up selling our food truck, bringing the llama to life. Our llama's name is Otis after our food truck, and doing the gnarly colors and really bright, fun, loud, like breaking all the packaging norms, to be honest. And I think that that is what put us on the shelves. And that was a lot of the feedback. And then people would taste the granola and they're like, oh my gosh, this is the best granola I've ever had. I could eat the whole bag, et cetera, et cetera. I think what we're still trying to nail down, to be honest, is our price point. I mean, it's pretty expensive granola, and the margins on our side aren't great, but really trying to figure out, okay, how, if I'm not there to sell the granola, why would people buy it? And what am I telling them to buy? I think the whiskey piece is still pretty confusing for some people. And so we're still trying to navigate how to accurately explain what we've got going on. I don't know if
Yeah.
that answers the question.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. I think one, the packaging piece is interesting because I agree. Like when I went there and looked at all the granola, yours stood out. It was a differentiator in the set. All of the rest look completely the same. So I like that you did that, but I also think it is kind of a risk because people typically just have that one look. But I think it's working for this brand just because it brings a little bit of excitement and you're like, oh, llama
Yeah.
on granola, what is that about?
Yeah. Wait, where'd you buy it?
I bought it. I actually drove to Ohio to, I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but
Oh
I
my
drove,
gosh.
there was a grocery store in Ohio that we went to. I honestly don't even remember the name. I'll have to
Oh,
look
it
it
might
up.
have been Bueller's, probably.
Yes, it is Bueller's Fresh Foods in Canton, Ohio.
Can't know how. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh, I love that. Well,
yeah,
thank you so much for buying some.
yeah, no,
For the
definitely.
comment.
Yeah. So when we talk about, you were talking about whiskey and how that is a differentiator, how are you like getting consumers over the hump of, hey, it's granola, but it has this whiskey addition, which isn't typically the norm?
Yeah. The $1 million question, right? We and for those listening that haven't tried Granarly, we have two whiskey SKUs and then we branched out and did three without whiskey because I do think while whiskey is a differentiator, we also are gluten-free, allergen friendly, no seed oils, and one of our blends has no added sugar. It's just sweetened with maple syrup, which on the label is an added sugar, but we don't like use artificial sweeteners. And then they're all vegan. And so we have a lot going on. And I think in this transition time right now, I'm trying to figure out like how, because we launched in Sprouts this year and I did about 35 demos myself in August. I went and did a Sprouts tour. And I love doing them, but like it's just not feasible for me to do that all the time, although I'd love to. If I could just do that, I would love it. But if I can educate people about the whiskey, they get it. But I can't do that with everyone. And I think people naturally want to eat granola for breakfast. People don't normally, hopefully, want to have whiskey for breakfast. So that's the first hump that we've had to get over with
Yeah.
people is like, hey, it's snackable granola. You can eat it all day long. I know it's normally a topping on your yogurt, but it's actually good as a midday snack. Second of all, even if you don't like whiskey, it bakes out and it doesn't have a strong whiskey taste. So you still might like it. I think it just adds like a nice honey, like cinnamon texture and taste to it. It doesn't really taste like whiskey. And then third, the last thing is if you're pregnant or you're a kid, like you can still eat it. And so there is a lot of education that needs to happen around Granarly, to be honest, that I'm still trying to navigate how to do that.
Yeah.
I have some ideas, like just cleaning up our packaging, but something I'm very passionate about right now is our number one selling SKU is our espresso yourself blend, and it doesn't have whiskey in it. So now I'm like, okay, y'all want to try Granarly because it's whiskey granola, but now you like the one that has dark chocolate and caffeine, which I can't blame you. That's my favorite. But like, okay, which lane do we own? And we need to pick one and stick with it. And I think that is so crucial. Like, I'm a big believer in that. If I could go back and start Granarly all over, I think I'd pick one flavor and nail our packaging, maybe two flavors, nail the packaging, make it very clear what's going on, and pick one lane and stay in it. Like, maybe we are the whiskey granola, or maybe we are the allergen granola or allergen friendly granola, whatever. But like really owning that lane and then expanding from there.
Yeah. So how many flavors did you actually launch with?
We have five, but most of our grocery stores have three. So most of them have Marty Party, Espresso, and Groovy Green.
Got it. Okay. All right. So you're in a couple of retail stores down south, Louisiana, a little bit in Austin, and
Mhm.
then it sounds like Target called. So
Yes.
how did that connection even happen?
Yeah, so between COVID rebranding, I don't know who all will be listening to this, but I love to provide encouragement and just shed a lot of light because I think it's so easy to listen to other founders or look at websites and be like, they're crushing it. I could never. And I'm like, no, it takes a lot of grit And it takes a lot of open-handedness to be willing to pivot where not away from your brand. Like it's so good to have your mission, vision, and values. I'm so strong on that and like sticking with them, but also like you have to kind of go where it flows, you know? And so I had been talking to Whole Foods for years. It was always a no, Central Market no. And then I personally moved to Denver right after COVID just for a little reset. Personally, I went through some things, and it wasn't until I stepped away from Austin that everybody in Austin wanted Granarly. And I don't know if it was just like coming out of 2020 and a weird year with COVID or what, but we basically launched in Central Market September of 2021, and that was our first like actual big retailer. You know, it was Texas wide. We were in 10 Central Markets. And then the next May, we launched in Whole Foods as part of their Forager program, which I love. Both of those, cannot say enough good things about Central Market and the Forager program at Whole Foods, just because it's a great way to break into big retail, but still on a small scale and learn all the nuances. And they have a lot of programs and really nurture your brand, which is good. Anyway, and so we launched in those. They were doing well. And I just love to encourage people too to never take advantage of the small beginnings, because you never know who you're going to meet at a farmer's market or what buyer you're going to come across at whatever event you're doing. And that's how Target found me. They were here on an offsite, and I think they were looking at a couple small Whole Foods in town. And they happened to be at the Whole Foods that I have an end cap at, which I didn't even pay for. That part of the Forager program just put me on the end cap. And they found me there. And the granola buyer emailed me. And she was like, I was driving back from Georgia. I'm from Georgia, but I was driving back to Austin from Georgia. And she emailed me through my contact form. So not even my email. And it was hello@howdy@granarly.com. And she's like, hey, Morgan, I'm the head granola buyer at Target. I found your product in Austin at Whole Foods. We want to launch you nationwide. Can you do it? And I was like, this is spam. Like, this
Right.
is not real. And so I was with my friend Kyle, and I looked it up on LinkedIn. Sure enough, lead granola buyer at Target. And I was like,
Wow.
what? And so I emailed her back and I was like, yeah, absolutely. Like, can we hop on a call? Like, I can't today. I'm small, woman owned. We don't have any fundraising and I need to find a new manufacturer. But like, yeah,
Yes.
my yes is a yes. I'll figure it out. And so that was July of 2022. And we launched nationwide with them in June of 2023.
Wow. That's amazing.
So I was in Whole Foods Forager program. Target, we were in 512 of their stores. So not all of them. They have 1,800, and they really put us in every super Target. A lot of the grocery heavy stores. And then we were just part of Sprouts Innovation Set. So part of their, like, I guess it's their Forager program.
Got it. So what exactly is the Whole Foods Forager program?
Yeah, it's the local Forager program. So they like to highlight local products. And do you have Whole Foods where you are?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So you may notice sometimes, I don't, it depends. I mean, I'm in Austin, so it's like the Whole Foods Mecca. So I'm not really sure how it works at every like major city or cities, but usually it's from anything from going into the store and looking at products, and there'll be little local tags on them, up until like sometimes they'll have aisles that are like local to Austin, like made in Texas. And there's all these guidelines. So I was manufactured within the mile radius. We were technically still local because of where we manufactured in Louisiana. It was like on the Texas border. And so we met the guidelines, but it's basically a way where you learn promos and being on shelf and velocities and working with a category manager and all the things that you need to know about being on a shelf, but not at the cost of going mass retail, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And does that guarantee you then placement within the store, or is it for a temporary period of time?
Oh, so yeah. So they have this program called the Leap program, I believe. I get them all mixed up. And I think that is more of like apply and be a Leap brand. It doesn't guarantee you shelf space, but they kind of teach you Whole Foods ways. Target has one too. Target has an accelerator program. And even if you go through it, it doesn't mean that you will get on their shelf, but it kind of teaches you Target systems and nuances and what they're looking for. And obviously, there's a win for them as well, because it helps them kind of vet the brands and see which ones will do well on the shelf, but it's not always guaranteed. With the local forager program, they foraged and found me. Well, kind of, I put it on their shelf, but that's what they brought me in through. So I got into all the Austin local stores, but it didn't guarantee to me placement on like a regional or national scale. That's still like category reviews and everything you have to do.
Got it.
It does give you a little bit of an advantage, but there's pros and cons to that, right? Like the Sprouts innovation set I was just on, they bring you in and they basically look at all your data, test you out, and then if you underperform, they don't bring you in, but if you do well, they bring you in. So it's like it's kind of cutthroat. I mean, it's good and bad, right? It's like you get one chance, and if you don't succeed in 3 months, well, sorry. But if you do, then great. But like it's I don't know, it's kind of tough.
Yeah. And you only have kind of a limited time to really get consumers in the door and buy.
Yeah, and like to be real, it's expensive. I mean, and I'm sure here a lot. It's like it's not just oh my product's great, my brand is great, and I can vouch for it. It's like how much money are you willing to spend it on promos, and can you work with influencers, and like things have gone out of hand financially. So it's not impossible. I don't like to ever come across as that, but it is. You got to pick your battles and figure out where it's worth investing your time and money that you have if you have any.
Yeah, yeah. When you were right before you launched in Target, were you utilizing influencers and utilizing that kind of mode in regards to getting your name out there with the brand?
Yeah. Yeah, so with influencers, we haven't done a lot of paid advertising. I can't speak to if that's right or wrong. It just where we didn't fundraise until we launched in Target, and even then it was really just to get our inventory, and we had a little bit of a marketing budget. I've done a lot of the grassroots approach with Granarly. Just there's a lot of micro influencers that just want free product and are down to post and share, and I think that's done really well for us. I've never really paid big influencers. I do have some other brands down the road I want to start, and as much as I don't want to give into it, I think that's the way to succeed these days. I don't know. It's such a catch 22, right? It's like a lot of these brands are celebrity endorsed, but the celebrities aren't really making the product. So, it's just trying to figure out like which way you want to go. We worked with a few Target specific influencers, new finds at Target. Like there's Target influencers. And so we worked with a few of those just to get our name out and paid for some stories and stuff. But yeah, more like just grassroots organic posting and friends and family of friends and having an ambassador and an affiliate program.
Got it. Okay. All right. So then going back, so you're driving from Georgia to Austin. You
Yes.
get this email that says, "Hey, want to bring you into Target." You respond. What were the next steps after that? Did you have an actual kind of pitch? Did you go there? Was it virtual?
Yeah. So I did a little dance for joy. I was like, you're kidding. I think I started crying. I was like, because it's so funny. I actually made a video to send to Target for a year. I think it was during COVID. So this was 2 years prior to them emailing me. And I never sent it. It's on YouTube listed as private. Like I never sent it to anyone. And it's me like talking about how I want to be in Target. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like whether you believe in prayer or manifesting or putting the vision in front of you, like to me, it's prayer, but I'm so big on those things. Just like shoot for the stars. Like, what do you got to lose? And it may never happen, but like, it definitely won't happen if you don't try. And so anyway, it was just kind of surreal when they called me, but I got back to Austin and yeah, they set me up for their line review and like category review. So they weren't having people in person, which I'm bummed. Like, I've still never been to Target headquarters, but they used to do in-person meetings. And this one was virtually, and they were like, we have a pitch deck, you get this amount of minutes and you got to sell us on your product. So like it wasn't just like, hey, we want you, you're in. It was like, no, you got to still prove yourself. We got to go through all the steps, but it was definitely helpful that they reached out to me. So I got all prepared, my little slides, and I'm crazy. I went to Target and I put it on the shelf and took pictures of what it would look like and like all the commercials we could do. I just love kind of like painting the full picture for people. And so I did my little pitch and they can't give any feedback. They were like, okay, you'll hear from us in 6 months. I'm like, 6 months? Like you're just gonna, all
Leave
right,
me.
well, cool. And it didn't take 6 months, but they can't like overpromise anything. And so, yeah, I heard back from them and they kept being like, hey, this doesn't guarantee your placement, but can you fill out this form or this, all these little things. And I'm like, what does this mean? And luckily enough, I met a guy in Austin that used to work for Target. And so he kind of like helped me with the nuances. Just like another thing, caveat, connections are everything. Like network and meet people because you never know when you may need to lean on someone and vice versa. Like I hope people lean on me one day or that this is helpful to someone because we're all just trying to figure it out. And like, it was so random that I met this Target guy, but he helped me a ton. So anyway, he was ex-Target, just for the record. But yeah, so then they finally were like, okay, we want to bring you in the store. We don't want to do all the stores, all the doors, which I'm glad. And I think looking back now, I think I would have pushed for more regional locations versus all 512. But, it is what it is. We went with 512 and they basically were like, without giving you POs, this is our verbal confirmation. And I was like, all right, well, I got to find a new manufacturer. And I was working as if it was a yes, just because I'm like, there's no way I could get all this together by, let's say, April ship date, and it's now November if I don't work now. So I started vetting manufacturers, figuring out who could produce if we were to scale up to 1,800 doors with Target at these rates, all those things. Found a manufacturer, went for my first round of funding. We raised $500,000, and I got a lot of no's. Even though I had Target POs, I'm like, all right, well, no one wants to invest. Like I literally have Target orders. But I really am a big believer that you got to just go with the right yes. And I got the right yes. And my investor was amazing. And we found a new manufacturer and we got I've never seen so much granola made in my life. And we shipped it out and hit the shelves on June 11th. It was crazy.
Wow. That's crazy because I feel like everything you say is literally just a continuous path to what your vision has been. Just people being put in the right place at the right time to create kind of this story of the brand and the vision that you had that night, which is pretty amazing.
It's true. I feel like my story is it's not super special or unique. We all have our own stories in our own way, right? But I do feel like it's allowed me, and trust me, I've gotten it wrong a lot of times where I just want to control and like take matters into my own hands and figure it out, and that's led to a lot of stress and a lot of just like sucking the life out of me. And I have to fight it constantly, but just trusting the process of like, okay, if it's not, I mean, that's what being an entrepreneur is. It's just problem solving and figuring out if it's not a no, if this is a no right now, what can we do in the interim to help us grow and get to that next step, whatever that is. And really just not taking your eye off the prize and getting discouraged. I mean, there's been so many times where I want to give up, but I just know it hasn't been the right time. And I'm very grateful that I haven't quit. But, you know, 5 years ago before Target called, I would have been like, how are we ever going to make it?
Yeah.
So you just never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. So when you talked a bit about investors, right before you got into Target, how did you even find an investor, or how did you even know kind of the steps you needed to take in order to do something like that?
I think people forget, but you can Google a lot of things. Like I know that sounds silly, but when I was finding my manufacturers, I talked to this like manufacturer headhunter, and I get that those are great for some people, but they wanted to charge me a lot of money, and I was like, I don't have money to pay you to find me a manufacturer that I can just Google. So honestly, with same with funding, I was like Googling CPG funds, venture capital. Like I didn't know what I was talking about. Like I had to go out and learn it. But a lot of again connections, my network. There's a group here in Austin that I got plugged into. The SKU network is a accelerator program, and then Naturally Austin. They also have Naturally Boulder and Naturally around the U.S. But I got plugged in with them, and then there's this Wake Up CPG thing here once a month on a Thursday morning, and really just leaning into your networks and asking questions and not being afraid. I mean, I used to go meet with potential investors and cry because I was so embarrassed by my finances. I'm not, finances aren't my strength. But when I found this one investor, he was like, hey, I'm good at finance. You don't have to be like, I can help you out in this process. And so that was such a relief to be like finding someone that not only wanted to write me a check, but to come alongside me and be a partner. And I think that's what I mean by the right yes is I got a lot of no's. I got a lot of call me when you hit 1 million in revenue. And I'm like, well, Target's probably going to get us there. Like, can you just trust me right now? But I am glad that it worked out. But yeah, Google networking. I would pitch to people that were way out of my league, but they would almost always refer me to other people. And so it was just kind of like continuing the process and not giving up.
Yeah. No, I love that. Just the fact that like even though you're having no's, you're continuing to reach out, find the person, and then you actually do. So I think that's definitely a great note, just to not give up when you're hearing all of those no's and you get discouraged.
Oh, and it's exhausting. It's like the most, especially when it's something you believe in and you're like, I want to do this. Like it's really draining and exhausting. But yeah, you got to keep going. And someone once told me they're like, fundraising is a full-time job. And I don't know why that just made me feel better, but I'm like, okay, I mean, a full-time job is a lot of work, so I just got to keep after it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you got the funding, you found the manufacturer, and you delivered on time to Target. What were the kind of early reactions and sales once you did get on shelf?
Yeah, Marty Party was definitely our best seller consistently. The OG is really good, but yeah, I think for the first, let's say 3 to 6 months, sales were trending up. They were looking good. And, a lot of, every store have velocities and benchmarks that we're required to meet. And when they tell me them, I'm like, oh, that's easy. But then when you get on the shelf, it's actually not that easy just because you're in a lot of stores, right? And there's a lot to keep up with. And so I think looking back, like, to be honest, our velocities haven't been where they need to be. And there's so many factors that could go into that, whether it's pricing or like we talked about the packaging or just placement or region. I mean, there's so many factors that go into it. But yeah, I think the response was great. It was fun to see a lot of my community that I nurtured from the beginning being able to find it in their local Target. Like that was really cool and surreal to me. Like instead of waiting for me to ship it or I mean, it was our first like national grocery store. So it was cool for my friends just to be like, I found this today while I was grabbing a candle or whatever. But I do think that sales have they've ebbed and flowed. Let's just be real. You can put a lot of your eggs in, let's say, Target basket. I mean, I could spend every dollar I have promoting in Target, but that's the fine line with having advisors and mentors and just peers in the space and really figuring out, okay, do I need to spend X amount of dollars demoing in 150 targets? Is that going to move the needle? Or is it worth having one influencer and paying them the same amount, but to broadcast to their audience? And that, I mean, that's the trick. And I don't have the answer. I still don't know the answer. And I think that's the blessing and the curse of being a CPG founder and just trying to navigate a crowded space in a big retailer is just figuring out like what actually is going to move the needle and just being willing to try and pivot. So
Yeah.
that's how it's been with Target.
Was there any, like during those first couple of months of being on shelf, did you do anything specifically when it comes to marketing and drive?
Yeah, we did a lot. We do a lot of Instagram and email. And so again, all organic, but we did some paid advertising with Target, but just pointing people to the store and utilizing some technology of like taking a picture of receipts and getting reimbursed and those things just to like get the word out more. And we also worked with some influencers. We would send them gift cards to go in and buy the product and post about it or write reviews. But we did a lot of Target or just funny reels, like going in and interviewing Target guests and asking them if they've ever had Granarly and those kinds of things, which made for good content. And then just reminding our consumers that you can buy it at Target. And we did something kind of crazy. We basically shut off our website and pointed everyone to our stores, which is a little berserk, but we basically were like, we want you to go buy this at Target or Target.com. If you don't have a Target that carries it nearby, you can order it for free, just to really push all of our sales into the stores for a bit. So that worked for a while. Then I think the hype kind of wore off, to be honest.
Yeah. That's a smart way, though, I think, initially to get people kind of like their mindset in regards to where they can buy.
Yeah, because some people choose the D2C lane and freaking own it and go with it. And I just really was like, hey, I love these stores I work with. I'd rather you go purchase it in store, send me a shelf fee, like all those kinds of things. And so that's the route we chose.
Yeah. So today, what does it look like in regards to mix with D2C versus your retailers?
Oh, we're like 85% retailers, I would say, which, pros and cons of that. It's like if the retailers drop you, like you got to figure out how to make sales in the other direction. So I don't know that I would advise people to do that big of a split, but it is the Granarly story and just how it's been. So that's where we're at.
Is that where you ideally would like to be, or are you thinking about like a shift more back into D2C?
To be honest, and not many people know this, you're the first hearing it, but I think the brand of Granarly is strong. I think I want to work on some more innovative products that need to be in the kitchen and explored a little bit more and really some thought behind it. I think, as you probably heard from the Granarly story, we kind of just hit the ground running and ran for 10 years. And now I'm like, okay, we have a great brand, we have a great product, we have a great loyalty, but let me take a step back and figure out what the next iteration of Granarly is. And I would love to bring it into a kitchen locally and kind of test out some things. And I think the beauty of D2C is that you can kind of own that a little bit more of like trial and error, like with Amazon or what your website, like we did cereal for a second. I just threw it up on my website one day and I was like, try some cereal.
Yeah.
And so it's good to kind of get feedback that way versus like a national launch. So I don't know. I don't have the answer for you on that yet, but I think that's kind of what we're leaning towards, is just kind of bringing it back home for a second and figuring out what wave two of Granarly looks like.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think even what you were saying about like testing out different things on your website, a lot of, retailers I feel do that in regards to just understanding what's working and what's not. And then when you find something that's doing really successful, then you feel a lot more confident in going to retail and being on shelf.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Sounds like you have a lot more ideas. It sounds like you're going through kind of a revamp and a reinvigoration of the brand. So what does
Yeah.
2025 look like for the brand?
That's a great question. I got an email today and it's very fresh and very new, and I can't tell you anything about it, but it changes the trajectory of next year. And I'm like, that's the roller coaster of CPG, right? It's like one big account could change everything, but figuring out, okay, does this fit into our plan next year? Like, can we make this happen? To be honest, before this email, I was kind of headed towards like, maybe we bring our snack packs back, or maybe we work on a granola bar that's high protein and lower sugar, but still has oats and like more, Nature Valley has a granola bar, but there's not many like granola bars out there. Bar category is crowded. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I would love to innovate in the oat space, but more so like I said, a higher protein, lower sugar, gluten-free product that tastes amazing. But I don't exactly know what that is yet. So I think we will scale back our stores, to be honest, the retail stores, just because it's expensive and some distributors we're working with, it's a little complicated. I don't think Granarly's going anywhere, but it will be a revamp, to say
Yeah.
the least.
No, that's good. Any sort of change. I mean, I think that's important. The fact that, how you create your brand and how it starts can vary and change throughout many years, right? And just finding the new direction for it and keeping it fresh and unique and different.
Yeah, and I think even down to like we talk a lot about branding and packaging, but this was talked about on the panel this morning. Technology is something to always keep in mind, and also Whole Foods is very big right now into regenerative organic and sourcing ingredients. And it's like even down to where we get our ingredients. I mean, it doesn't mean I have to change my whole recipes, but it could mean I change my supply chain, So there's so many routes that could be revamped. And I think that it's so easy to look at brands like Olipop, for instance. The founders failed at a soda brand before they ever started Olipop. And it's like maybe granola isn't Granarly's like big sell, but maybe there's an iteration that comes from it. I don't know. But I think it is being very open-minded around where you could go.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good learning for a lot of people and just hope, I think, too, for where people are in their brand.
Yeah.
So just to back up for a second, you talked about distributors. Is that completely and solely how you work, or do you also go direct? And what do you prefer between the two?
We go direct with Target, which has been amazing. We'll collect, so their trucks pick it up from my warehouse, and that has been a seamless process. I've loved it. And then we worked with distributors with Sprouts, and that has been not so fun. Blessing and a curse, right? Working with them, they've gotten us like 20 new doors this year. Like Bueller's is one, just because we're in their network. And through Sprouts, we've opened up a lot of their DCs, which has allowed for a lot more eyes on our brand, which is amazing. But there's just a lot of nuances with distributors that you got to watch out for if you're not careful, like spoils and different things. You got to choose your own battles. It's not always easy. Yeah, there's a lot of chargebacks and different things with distributors, but it's been big for our business. So you really just got to have someone that's keeping an eye on the invoices and cost and everything involved with that, and just create margin for that, honestly.
Yeah.
And I don't think we've gotten that right, and that's something I want to work on moving forward.
Do the retailers, do they ask for you to go through a distributor, or is it just you choose that for specific retail channels?
Most do. Like Whole Foods local, I do direct. Like I go deliver the orders, and I love it because
Oh,
I get to
wow.
like see the team members or my intern, but I love it. But then Target, they let you decide. There's different pricing structures. With Sprouts, we had to go with this distributor, and I've learned most that I'm talking to now do want you to go with a certain distributor. I think it just obviously makes it easier on their end when it comes to purchasing.
Yeah. So it's kind of a mix just based on some retailers demand it, quote unquote, and then
Yeah.
others you kind of can have a choice.
And I'm sure if you're very, very large and bringing in lots of revenue and churning a lot of product, you can negotiate that a little bit. But, when you're the small guys, you got to, like I said, choose your battles.
Yeah. Yeah. So what does a day in a life with Morgan look like right now?
Great question. A day in the life, I've learned, I'm 31 now, and I've learned over the years, like I am very ADD, high energy, and if I don't work out in the beginning of the day, I'm just a mess all day. So I wake up at 5:30 usually. I have my cup of coffee, and my quiet time. And then I walk my dog Peaches, and then I do something active, even if it's just walking, running, whatever. And then I literally no day looks the same. I'm in my home office right now, but I have an office. Some days I'm creating content, making recipes. Some days I'm on the phone with Target. Some days I'm delivering to Whole Foods. Some days I'm getting random emails from someone that could change our whole company. Like, it's really never a dull moment. But I will say in the past, like two, probably when Target called, I found myself crying in my closet one day, and I've never reached that point. I'm very happy and optimistic, and I love life and I love living. But I let the pressure and weight get the best of me, and I was like, I refuse to do this in the name of losing my sanity. And so I really try to cut it off when I can at certain times. And I love spending time with my boyfriend and my family and my friends and just try to find the balance. I mean, you could work yourself to death so fast. And I think it's just life's too short. So I try to stay active, get outside a lot, and travel a lot, and just work in between all the mix.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love Peaches as your name for you.
Yeah.
That's so cute.
I wish you would come say hi. She's funny, but maybe she's not here.
I love it. So now, Morgan, can you tell us kind of where you can buy Granarly, where we can reach out and understand like what's happening with the direction of the brand from a social standpoint and where people can follow you?
Absolutely. Yeah, you can buy it at granarly.com is our website. You can buy it at Target, at Sprouts. If you go to our website, there's a tracker on there and you can type in where you live. I think that's probably how you found it. And that's probably the easiest way to find it locally. We're at King Supers and City Market in Colorado. We're on Amazon, so that's probably the fastest way to get it. And then you can follow us at Granarly on Instagram and TikTok. You can follow me, Morgan A. Potts, on Instagram. I also have a TikTok and a YouTube channel that I need to get back going, and on LinkedIn as well. I love connecting and love answering questions, and yeah, I'm always available, or try to be, if anyone ever wants to connect.
No, I love that. Thank you so much, Morgan. I think this is just so fun talking to you and just hearing about kind of your pivot that really looks and seems like it's in the right direction in regards to where your life should be going. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been a joy to talk to you.
Yay.